Universal Basic Income Bill.
Universal Basic Income.
The Universal Basic Income.
Universal Basic Income in Canada, right?
Universal Basic Income.
Guaranteed Livable Basic Income, or UBI, whatever you want to call it.
It's not a universal basic income.
Universal basic income in Canada, it's actually closer to passing than I realized.
Canada is considering a guaranteed universal basic income program.
Universal basic income for every Canadian. Actually, I misspoke. You don't even have to be Canadian. It's just those who are eligible to work in Canada.
Something enormous is happening in the Senate right now. Something that will affect every Canadian, every family, and every paycheck.
Welcome to Canadian Rant, the channel where we cut through the noise and break down the policies shaping your wallet, your rights, and your future. Today, we're diving into Bill S-206, Canada's latest push for a universal basic income. Now, what does that mean? Imagine a system where every Canadian over the age of 17 receives a guaranteed livable income, no matter their job, background, or situation. Supporters say it's about dignity, fairness, and ensuring no one falls below the poverty line. Critics argue it's too expensive, could discourage work, and might replace existing social programs. This bill is more than just legislation. It's a debate about the kind of country Canada wants to be. Is it about survival or about opportunity? Is it about protecting citizens or reshaping the economy? Stick with me because we're going to break down what Bill S-206 really means for Canadians.
Canada is considering a guaranteed universal basic income program. While universal basic income is income for all, what the government is discussing here is guaranteed basic income where payments would only go to low-income individuals. And Canada's Parliamentary Budget Officer found that a UBI program would cut poverty rates by almost half, but would cost about $85 billion a year.
Canada is trying to pass a universal basic income, which means that everybody that is not making above a certain amount of money is going to be getting money pretty much from the government, which is going to be livable wage. How do y'all feel about this? Let me know in the comment section if you're for it or if you're against it, because it's coming.
Bill C-223, Universal Basic Income for every Canadian. Actually, I misspoke. You don't even have to be Canadian. It's just those who are eligible to work in Canada. You could be a temporary worker, you could be a refugee, you could be a permanent resident. It doesn't even matter. It's just for everyone. Come on in. I don't know about you, but I don't see any downsides to this. Like, there's absolutely nothing that could and will go wrong. So if everybody has nothing, we're all equal. I get it now. I get it, guys. I know if you're like me, you probably worked hard to get to where you are, right? Like, you probably went to school, you probably spent some money, you probably got some skills and abilities. But you know what? The bar just went up. And all that work you did to get above the bar, well, the bar just went up. So you and I are now closer to the bottom. Congratulations. If you're smart, you'll understand that they're taking your money and then giving it to other people, and maybe you if you qualify, but probably not. Oh Lord, they make it tough.
Universal basic income in Canada, it's actually closer to passing than I realized. So I have an ideological split here because people need money. People need rent. They can't afford rent and groceries. Yet half the population is allergic to effort. And now we're going to pay them to nap. And we have a national obesity crisis as it is. And if we do this for 5-10 years, it's going to look like baby elephant migration.
So if you're a Canadian, I'm sure you've heard of this Bill S-206 that has been approved in the Senate, is now headed to committee study. This is a big conversation right now in Canada about the idea of a guaranteed livable basic income, or UBI, whatever you want to call it. Now, as like someone who has empathy for others and who can show compassion, I do understand that there's a need to try and help people who are in poverty, but I don't view a guaranteed basic income as really that much of a solution. If we look here, this is going over the cost of what the guaranteed basic income would be. This is a 6-month period. This is province by province. If you actually take the numbers federally on an annual basis, what it would cost Canadians is $93 billion, which is more than federal healthcare transfers than GST costs Canadians. So just something to think about. Now, we saw what happened when the government came out with things like CERB, the student benefit during COVID. All this inflationary spending has just driven up the cost of everything. Inflation is up, and I truly believe that if we did implement some sort of guaranteed basic income, that we would again just see more inflation come out of it. Now, this is kind of like their news release. It talks about how Canada is losing tens of billions of dollars every year due to inadequate and expensive responses to the poverty response. I don't disbelieve the fact that there's, loss in those programs. I guarantee a ton of those programs need to be reworked. It's just, I don't think that a guaranteed livable basic income is the solution. We've seen other countries try and do this. Does not end up going very well. We saw how CERB ended up. It just disincentivizes people to work, right? So it's unfortunate. I hope that this does not happen. I mean, things like this have been tabled before. Leah Gazan from Winnipeg has tried tabling legislation to try and push for universal basic income before. It's unlikely this goes anywhere. It's just an interesting conversation to have. And me personally, I am against a universal basic income, but I do agree that we need to revamp our programs to help support those who are living in poverty.
It's not a universal basic income. This has been driving me crazy all week seeing this. The words matter. It's not whatever you want to call it. And then everyone's fighting it out in the comments over a wrong definition of what program is actually being proposed here. Canada is not about to implement universal basic income. That's not the proposal. They're proposing a guaranteed basic livable income, which is different. How is it different, you ask? Here's a few ways. First, who gets paid? In a true universal basic income, everybody gets paid. Generally, everyone who's an adult and a citizen will get the payment. And if you're a high income earner, you'll probably get it clawed back at tax time. The government's proposal, it's only for low income people, and the benefits income tested. So we get into those same problems with welfare where you're incentivized to not work, because if you work too much, you lose the benefit. Okay, next let's look at inflation. In a true UBI, the idea is that it's a redistribution of funds, not printing more money. So the possibility for inflation would be very low, whereas what the government is proposing is more like an expansion of welfare, so the likelihood of inflation is much higher. 3, the payment amount. In a true UBI, everybody gets the same everywhere in Canada. It's truly universal. So say the payment's $1,000 a month. Doesn't matter if you're in rural Saskatchewan or downtown Vancouver or Nunavut, everybody gets the exact same. The government, their idea is to change it based on the livable cost of the region you live in, which brings us to our next point. Looking specifically at housing, like I said, in a true universal basic income, it doesn't factor in. You get the same amount whether your rent is $500 or $2,500 a month. Whereas the government's proposal, it is included. The payment's calculated to cover local housing costs in your area, and this can have some unintended side effects. That being the moving incentive. So with a true universal basic income, if you're making $1,000 a month, no matter where you live, you're kind of incentivized to move to a lower cost of living area because then your benefit will be worth more. However, what the government's proposing, if you get a higher payment based on living in a higher cost of living area, you're incentivized to move to a high cost of living area to get a higher payment. And if you're already in one of those areas, say Vancouver, you're penalized by moving to a low cost of living area. So it creates this kind of lock-in effect, which may be inflationary for housing costs. And then finally, when it comes to the welfare system, UBI is seen as a replacement. The idea is you know how to spend money better than the government can spend it for you. So we're going to slowly replace all these welfare systems with the universal basic income. Whereas what the government's proposing is keep everything we have, all the bureaucracy and everything, and just add this on as a stopgap. So please stop calling this a universal basic income. It is not a universal basic income. It is a welfare add-on, guaranteed livable basic income. And I don't know if I support it. I definitely support a universal basic income. I think that's what we definitely need to move towards. My fear is that if we get this, then the government will just shut down any future discussion of a UBI and say this is good enough when it's not good enough. And if you're against a universal basic income, answer me this in the comments. We're headed towards 40%, 50% unemployment with AI. So what's your idea? What's your solution to 40% or 50% unemployment?
The government of Canada isn't even trying to hide the fact that they're communists anymore. They're trying to pass universal basic income in Canada right now. This is not a conspiracy theory, and it's not a joke. Bill S-206, an act to develop a national framework for a guaranteed livable basic income. That's universal basic income. Some of you, mainly communists, leftists, social justice warriors, probably think this is a good thing. And I'm about to tell you why you're very wrong. But first, let's go into some of the details of the bill. Participation in education, training, and labor is not required to qualify for universal basic income. You can literally not work the rest of your life or go to school and you will receive this income regardless. Now, maybe I'm crazy, but disincentivizing work and education for a 17-year-old that just wants to play video games, watch TV, and eat Cheetos all day doesn't sound like it's good for society. But the foolishness continues. The bill also says that it will be providing universal basic income to begin the transition of an economy designed to respond to the climate crisis. So this is based off the assumption that there is a climate crisis, which literally any credible scientist denies. You can read Fake Invisible Catastrophes and Threats of Doom, Dr. Patrick Moore, Climate Uncertainty and Risk, Judith Curry. I'll even throw in Fossil Future, Alex Epstein, all credible scientists that believe climate change is real but is not the end of humanity. Bill Gates himself, the ultimate advocate for climate change, denies it in his recent article. He spells out the current narrative about climate change that it will lead to the demise of humanity is incorrect. Fortunately for all of us, this view is wrong. Although climate change will have consequences, it will not lead to humanity's demise. Which, by the way, a lot of people don't know, but climate change also has positive consequences like global greening, but I really want you to understand the negative effect of a society that disincentivizes work and education in a population starting at a young age. This will disincentivize working, learning, and gaining skills. Soon unemployment will grow and the unemployed will outnumber the employed. The only way to make this work is to exponentially increase taxes on businesses and individuals that actually do work. This will push businesses and wealth away from our country. Governments will replace private sector jobs with public sector jobs, growing our dependence on the government. Soon, universal basic income will go from an option to a mandate, since you couldn't get a job if you tried. The government will then decide what you need and limit what you want. People will lose all sense of purpose in life. Those that don't believe they are getting enough money will commit crimes, making the country unsafe. See, communism tries to solve poverty by just giving people money, but that's not what solves poverty. Solving poverty takes working with the people that are in poverty to gain the skills they need to make their own income. This is how communism works. This is the system that led to the deaths of over 100 million people. They make you dependent on the government, take away your mental faculties and financial abilities so you rely on the state for everything. And it's all about control. This is the individual sponsoring the bill, Senator Kim Pat, an unelected official appointed by the Governor General under Justin Trudeau's recommendation. Life is about trade-offs, so the question is the universal basic income worth your freedom?
Hey guys, I'm Councillor Lisa Robinson. Let me say something that Canadian media refuses to say out loud while they spoon feed you fluff and distractions. Something enormous is happening in the Senate right now, something that will affect every Canadian, every family, and every paycheck. And they're not talking about it. They're not warning you, and they're not even whispering it. But I will, because you deserve the truth about the so-called guaranteed livable basic income that's being pushed through without real national conversation. Because what's happening right now in the Senate of Canada is not a regular policy debate. It is a turning point. On May 28th, Bill S-206, titled An Act to Develop a National Framework for a Guaranteed Livable Basic Income, was introduced into the Senate. Then, just a couple of weeks ago, on November the 6th, it passed second reading and was sent to committee. They've given it a name that sounds compassionate. Guaranteed Livable Basic Income. It sounds like kindness and it sounds like relief. But don't be fooled. This bill is nothing less than the single greatest expansion of government economic control that we've ever faced here in Canada. And I don't say that lightly. We've already lived through what happens when you give a government power over survival. We've seen bank accounts frozen, not for crime or terrorism, but for political disagreement. We've seen mandates that dictated whether you could enter a restaurant, board a plane, keep your job, visit a dying parent, or simply exist in public. All based on compliance. They told us the shot was safe and effective, and we all know it wasn't. And after all of that, now they want to design a system where your right to food, shelter, life choice, or your very survival is controlled in the exact same way. This is the softest, quietest, most modern form of tyranny, economic obedience. Let's call it what it is. A basic income isn't free money, it's dependency. And when government becomes your paycheck, it becomes your master. And don't for a second think that they won't attach conditions. We've already seen how it works. Get the shot or you lose your job. Say the wrong thing and your account is frozen. protest peacefully, and your life is shut down. Now imagine, get your next booster or lose your basic income. Comply with the next climate mandate or your income disappears. Say something the government doesn't like and your income evaporates. This isn't paranoia. This is exactly how centralized systems operate around the world. And this idea, this entire framework is coming straight from global institutions that have long pushed for complete social and economic control. Now let's talk about the economic engine behind this so you can see how it actually works. We are drowning in debt right now. We are paying billions of interest every single month. And now this government wants to pay millions of dollars to Canadians not to work indefinitely. Think of a family of four suddenly making more money by not working. What happens? People stop working, businesses collapse, services vanish, inflation explodes, and the only lifeline left, the government. That is not equity. That is not progress. That is the architecture of control. This isn't compassion. It's dependency dressed up as kindness. It destroys the incentive to build, to move forward. It collapses the middle class. It expands the welfare state until everyone is trapped inside it. Because here's the goal. This is not about helping the people. This is about creating a Canada where the government becomes the source of your survival and therefore the owner of your freedom. A nation where Canadians don't stand on their own 2 feet, but wait for permission, wait for approval, wait for deposits. A Canada where compliance becomes currency. And let me underscore this. Why is nobody talking about this? Why isn't this front page news? Why aren't the major networks warning Canadians that what this actually means? Why is one of the most consequential bills in modern Canadian history being pushed quietly through the Senate with barely a whisper from the people paid to inform the public? Is it because they're paid not to? Is it because the more silent it stays, the easier it is to pass? The less Canadians know, the less Canadians resist. And the government is counting on silence. They're counting on you not noticing until it's too late. Here's what you need to know. Call your federal MP, call the senators, especially those on the Legal Constitutional Affairs Committee. Do not call your MPP. Provincial legislators have no authority over a federal bill. This fight is occurring at the federal level and it's happening right now. Yes, legally, the federal government can create this guaranteed livable basic income. They have constitutional authority over federal income support, taxation, federal spending, and national social frameworks, programs tied to federal benefits. But here's the catch. Once a federal benefit exists, the government can attach conditions to it, legally through regulation, not even requiring a full parliament vote. They could say, to receive this benefit, you must comply with X requirement. To stay eligible, you must meet Y mandate. If you refuse, payment is suspended. We've seen this already with CERB audits, EI job search requirements, disability benefits, medical compliance. So yes, it is legally possible for the government to time mandates or conditions to your income. Now, what stops this overreach? Only 3 things. Public outrage, because politicians fear bad headlines. Pressure, your calls to MPs and senators will matter. And constitutional challenge. If your income becomes subject to mandates, it may violate Section 7, Section 15, or Section 2. But that only happens after the harm has already been done. That's why the time to act is now, before it's law. Listen, this bill is building the infrastructure for dependency. We've already seen bank accounts frozen. We've already seen dissent punished. We've already seen mobility restricted. We've already seen digital compliance experiments. And now income centralization. When government gives you something, it can take it away. Once people depend on basic income, the state holds the leverage over your behavior, your speech, your medical choices, your travel, your digital identity, your political participation. And that's exactly why authoritarian systems around the world push UBI, not for compassion, but for control. Here's what we must do immediately. Call your federal MPs, demand they oppose Bill S-206. Call your senators, insist they do not surrender our freedoms. Share this video, make it viral, force the media to report. Ask every leadership candidate, where do they stand? Prepare now for constitutional challenge, but we should stop this before the damage is done. I am Councillor Lisa Robinson, and I will never stay silent while my country is being reshaped into something unrecognizable. Not by guns, not by force, but by quiet weapons of economic control. Because the truth is the foundation of justice, and without truth, nothing gets healed. Please stand up now before this becomes law, before this becomes permanent, before Canada becomes something no longer we recognize. I am Councillor Elise Robinson, the People's Councillor, and I will never whisper the truth to protect a lie. If you believe real power belongs to the people, follow me, subscribe, and share this message. Until next time, stand strong, stay fierce, and God bless.
So, where does this leave us? Bill S-206 isn't law yet, but if passed, it would mark Canada's first national framework for a guaranteed livable income. That's huge. It could mean fewer people relying on food banks, more freedom to pursue education or caregiving, and a stronger safety net for millions of Canadians. But let's be real. The questions are just as big as the promises. How will it be funded? Will it replace programs like employment insurance or disability benefits? And most importantly, will it actually reach the people who need it most? Supporters see universal basic income as a bold step toward justice, a way to ensure no Canadian is left behind in an economy that's increasingly unstable. Opponents warn it could balloon government spending, raise taxes, or even weaken incentives to work. At the end of the day, this debate isn't just about numbers, it's about values. Do we believe every Canadian deserves a guaranteed floor to stand on, or do we stick with the patchwork system we've always had? I want to hear from you. Is Bill S-206 the future of Canada, or just another political experiment that will fade away? Drop your thoughts in the comments because this conversation is bigger than one bill. It's about the kind of society we're building together. This is Canadian Rant. Let's see what are the thoughts about rants.